Hi, my name is DeAndre Tabon. I'm here for an instructional walkthrough meeting, post-meeting with Miss Meyer, who's functional academic teacher at Lovelady High School in Princeton, Texas.
I'm Miss Meyer. This is my first year at Lovelady. My first full year as an FAC teacher, but my fourth year as a teacher.
All right, Miss Meyer, we did a walkthrough during your world geography hour. Walkthrough at about 10:43 a.m. You started with a warm-up, CNN 10, and then you moved your lesson to a map lesson where you were teaching your kids. You walked them through a map, and as you can see on the walkthrough form, we cover some procedural practices and some instructional practices, and then we have evidence and notes. Then at the bottom of the walkthrough form, we have some reflection.
Okay.
As far as your location in the room, the front of the room, you're circulating around the room as you see at the bottom of the form. Great work is circulating around the room. The power zone, the proximity was great. I really liked how you did that. And then the teacher-learner interaction with the amount of students you had in the room. About 50% of the students, they kind of interacted pretty well with you.
Right.
We'll dive more into that here in a minute. In the procedural section, as I said, about half responded to the trivia question in the CNN 10. Excuse me. And then next question, can students explain what they were learning? Yes, some students kind of reviewed the video. About 5 students gave answers to different questions when y'all were going through the map, so that was impressive. And then the learning environment felt warm and inviting. You had word walls all over the classroom. You had a calendar on one of your whiteboards. So classroom, from the procedural perspective, it was very impressive. Instructional practices. There was no objective posted on the board. Princeton ISD has recently moved to Champs for its secondary campuses. I did notice that the Champs poster was posted in a corner in the room. And once again, we'll dive into that here in a little bit. And then the next question, what instructional practices is the teacher using? You used kind of like a whole group, a mini lesson with both the CNN 10. You kind of reviewed that. And then you did a mini lesson with the map. They had a worksheet. So some checks for understanding after the CNN 10, and then you reviewed the map as you were going through the map with them. And as you can see, I made my notes down the side of the page.
Okay.
And so, can you just walk us through the lesson that you were teaching that day?
Okay. So we usually start every day with a warm-up first, and we do CNN 10 to go just to kind of get the kids started on talking about current events. A lot of times they'll talk about different, things going on in different places in the world, and so we like to look at the maps as well for that. And so this week our lesson was about maps, and so we, I found a video that I thought explained that there are different types of maps, and talked about those different types of maps and gave examples. And so we watched that video and we kind of stopped and went over that some a little here and there. And I passed out while the video was playing a worksheet that had a map on it that we were going to go over, and that type of map, and I pointed out the differences in those types of maps, and that particular map that was on the video. I did have a student that had to redirect several times, and that made it a little difficult, but the kids responded really well because we have talked about maps a lot in other lessons, and so this is a way for us to kind of bring it to the forefront and to really get in depth into the maps.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed that you did have a student in the class that you had to redirect several times. And so how have you managed that in your classroom routine, classroom management, behavior management?
the student sometimes is easily redirected. Sometimes it takes a little more. I do have a parent in the classroom that I really should utilize more in helping with that, because it can be a distraction for the other students. Not only him having to be redirected because he does get up and wander in the classroom, but also because I have to stop the lesson in order to redirect him. So, I mean, I need to be better about utilizing that para, because it is an issue, and it disrupts the learning for the other students.
Okay. And I did notice that while you were kind of circulating the room and had to redirect that one student, you had a couple of students in the back of the classroom who may have gotten off task or
Right.
stopped paying attention, whom you may not have recognized. And so how do you kind of handle that on those off-task students who may be talking or not necessarily paying attention to your lesson or to whatever y'all watching? For instance, you had Noodle Kids kind of introduce the maps, and those two students just kind of were not focused on it. How do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, I try to get in a closer proximity to those students and ask them questions, because it seems like if you ask them more questions, they will pay attention a little more, because they know they might get called on. But that is something that I'm working on, especially with that many kids in there, and with that disruption going on. It is a problem. It does cause a lot of kids to get off task, and sometimes it's harder to get others back on task after that.
Okay. So what do you feel like went well during the lesson that I observed?
I feel like for the most part, the students seem to understand what the lesson was about. They seem to be able to get the information from the video that I showed, and they seem to take that in and be able to relate it to the worksheet when we got to the worksheet that we worked on. And they were able to, look at the worksheet and help make deduct the right answers to the questions based on what they did learn in the video and what we talked about after the video and during the video. So I think that went pretty well.
That's great. That's great. How do you think they responded to the activities, the lessons, the worksheet, the CNN 10? I noticed some engagement kind of picked up towards the trivia question. So do they normally respond in that manner?
Yes, so they like the CNN 10 every day when we watch it. I make sure to tell them that they have to watch closely, because I will ask questions afterwards. So I always ask, I ask them open-ended questions so that it's not me giving them an answer, so they know they have to pay attention. When it gets to the trivia question on CNN 10, they all like to try and figure out the right one. And a lot of times they do know the right answer. So it's really neat to see that in them and see them understand that. And they really get excited when they do know that answer. So that engagement piece there with them is something that they really enjoy, and that I also really enjoy in the class when we do that CNN 10 portion of the class.
Okay. All right. If you could reteach that same lesson, what might you change or adjust?
I would probably adjust my redirecting of the student that was kind of overshadowing everything. I would probably ask my para to be more hands-on with him, so that I could make sure that the other students who are getting distracted are able to get back on task, because I think that because of the continued redirection with that student, it made it difficult for me to do that.
Yeah.
I think that as far as the information that the students learned in the lesson, I think they did a pretty good job of retaining that information. We were able to relate it to some other things that we do. We do country profiles every week, and so every week the students get a different country, and they have to pick out where it is on a map. And so bringing, we kind of tied that into learning about the maps and what kind of maps different maps we use and we look at when we're doing the different lessons. So
And you teach a functional academics course, which is the core subjects, math, science, English, social studies. And so what kind of strategies do you find most effective when teaching that group of students?
I think that they work well in smaller groups sometimes, depending on the subject area. Sometimes they like to come and ask me questions privately because they don't want to ask them in front of the other classes, so, or the other kids in class. So, you know, calling them up and working with them one-on-one seems to help sometimes. Also, you know, they like to do, they also like to do the whole class things where they get to answer the questions. They enjoy kind of almost when you make it a competition. So sometimes we do that because they like being able to show off what they know and what they've learned.
Yeah.
So I like to incorporate that with the kids because they do really enjoy those things, and it also gets them talking about other things that that you know we can relate things to.
So do you have a long-term goal for their learning as their teacher?
Yeah, I think my long-term goal for them is for them to retain some of the information that that we give them and be able to use it in their daily lives as much as they can. Because I try and make sure that what they're learning is something that they will utilize. Because, you know, kids that aren't in an FAC class don't like to learn about things that they don't think they're going to use later on. So kids in an FAC class really don't want to do that. So I try and make everything relatable to them so that, you know, because I want their long-term goal to be able to utilize that information and not just be teaching them things just to check things off a list.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you think this lesson connected to your long-term goal?
Yeah, I do.
You want them to learn?
I do. You know, like I said, we use it when we talk about our country profiles, but also we talked about different types of maps, like be it a world map, a country map, a city map, a map of a place like a zoo or a theme park. And for them, I think that it definitely relates to them because, you know, when they get to the point to where they want to get out and about, even if they're going to Six Flags or you know, the zoo, we talked about how when I go to the zoo, I like to look at the map because I'll get lost and I'll end up with the reptiles when I want to look at, you know, the bears or something. And so it's good for them to be able to understand that there are different types of maps and different places to help them, so that if they get lost somewhere and they know, oh, this place should have a map. Let me go find that map and be able to use that map to find where they are on it and where they need to get.
That's perfect.
I think is something that they will definitely will utilize.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So I did notice an objective posted on the board. Can you help me understand?
So sometimes I have difficulty with posting just one objective because I do teach all 4 core subjects. And so sometimes it's a little difficult to pinpoint a specific objective to put on the board. We do talk about usually what we're going to learn at the beginning of the day in our different subject areas. And but I just did not have one posted that day.
Okay. But however, you and the students both know the end goal of the lesson.
Yes.
And what you're gearing the lesson towards, and you know what we're working towards that particular day.
Right, and we have heavily worked on maps, especially with working on those country profiles and things. And so, like I said, at the beginning of the day, we usually talk about what we're going to work on throughout the day because they come in and they will ask, what are we doing today? So we kind of briefly go over what we're going to do and what we're going to learn. And then, you know, during the lessons is usually when I try and relate that to them, and this is how you can utilize this in your everyday life. Yeah. So. And
Princeton has recently moved to Champs for its secondary campuses. I know they use it on their elementary campuses. And so they started the year with CNH, communication and help. So have you? I saw the poster posted in the corner, and have you kind of implemented that in your instruction or time together with your students? Have you had to implement those at any given point?
I mean, we've implemented it some, especially with communication. You know, trying to make sure that when we're transitioning in the hallways and things like that, that you know, we keep our volume at the right level. When we're doing individual classwork, that we're keeping our volume at the right level, because we do have kids that get excited during their work, or kids that will just talk out to themselves and things like that. So we do use it. I wish I actually had a bigger poster of it to put in my classroom because it's such a small poster. I think it's hard for them to see sometimes, but we have utilized it some, and it seems to help some when we do utilize it.
Sounds great. So, how does this lesson fit into the bigger picture of your unit or of the course that you're working on? As I heard you mention, you want them to learn, not just world maps, country maps, but you want them to learn local maps, when they go to the zoo. So, how does it fit into the bigger picture of that unit?
Okay.
This particular lesson.
So this was a map. The map that we did the worksheet over was kind of like a country map, and it showed things like lakes, rivers, roads, bridges, different towns, and things like that. So I wanted them to see that. They know that, we live in Texas and it's a big state and there's lots of places all over. We've had other times during other lessons when we do like our morning meeting, our question of the day might be, if you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? And so this kind of helps them, a kid can say, oh, I want to go to Paris, but they don't know where Paris is. Or maybe they don't know that there's a Paris, France and a Paris, Texas.
Yeah.
And so this kind of puts things like that into perspective for them, and they're able to kind of see, those things. We've looked at maps when we've talked about different landforms and things. And we looked at like a map of the United States, and we talked about the different, where there's mountains, where there's beaches, where, there's the valleys and the plains and things like that. So they, this kind of brings that into a little, we kind of started on a broader spectrum, and we're kind of slowly, zooming in on things. So we're going from a country, we'll go to a city, and then we'll go into something in the city, like the zoo. And so that's where it kind of falls into all of that, where we're going from a bigger scope into a smaller scope, and so that they can utilize that in those different areas.
So as an administrator, how can I best support you in reaching those instructional goals that you have for your group of kids?
I think just, I think having an administrator that can talk to our kids about those things, because our kids do get excited about it, and an administrator, when they do talk to our kids and they ask maybe what we're learning about, and the kids say they're learning about a map, and administrator says, well, where would you like to go on a map, or things like that, I think would help. As an administrator, I think also just being able to see, to kind of challenge the kids and see what they know about those things also, because what they show me and what they show you are two different things sometimes. And so I think being able to kind of challenge the students in that area is also helpful.
Okay. So what resources, coaching, or collaboration will help you strengthen, the practices that you already have?
I think if I had more maps that I could post around the classroom, that would be helpful, because, of the different types of maps. They've seen them, but to have them posted where they can see them and refer to them is helpful. I think, so as far as resources, that kind of thing. I think collaborating on maybe some special types of maps that we can use would be a good idea. Things that maybe I don't think of that they can use it for. I think that would be something that we could collaborate on as well.
So what successes from today do you want to build on moving forward?
I think the successes of, the kids actually seeming to understand, what a map legend is, what the different things on the map, how to compare, the things in the legend to the things on the map, and understand what those differences, what those things mean when you're asking a question like, what bridge do you have to cross to go across this river? I think that's stuff I want to build off of. Every map legend is different, every map is different, so being able to show them the differences in those things, and then being able to understand that, I think is a good way to build off of that success they've had so far.
Yeah. So I noticed some kids were really excited and really engaged, especially at the CNN 10 moment. And then when you use the Noodle Kids So the technology and the resources that you use, it was perfect for the lesson. The worksheets that you hand out, I noticed some students were really engaged when you asked them specific questions, about the crossroads and about, cities and lakes and, how engaged they were when you asked them about bridges and things of that sort. So I noticed that they were really engaged. How might you get even more students talking during that part of the lesson?
I think maybe just having students maybe they should do a shoulder partner turn and talk first, and then we could talk as a class, because sometimes students can't, they are thinking about something but they don't know how to say it, but talking with someone else about it first can help them come out with their thoughts when we talk about it in class. So maybe doing a pause and a shoulder partner turn and talk would help with those opportunities for those kids that didn't necessarily engage as much.
Yeah. So I noticed that you walk through the worksheet with them, and versus have them complete it independently or in small groups, or maybe pair and share, or can you explain to me why you chose to do that method, walk through it with them, versus have them complete it independently or pair and share or in a small group?
So because of the type of questions that were on the worksheet, some of the students struggle with those types of questions, and I thought walking through it with them might help them with understanding the questions. It gives me the opportunity as a whole class to not have to explain each question multiple times, but to just explain it all together. Just because of the type of questions that they are, because depending on your students, I mean, especially AU kids, they have a harder time understanding the concept of some questions if they're more obscure. And so I feel like when it comes to questions like that on a worksheet, I like to do it as a whole class, because it helps the students understand.
Okay. So what's one thing you would like to try differently the next time? Like if you taught this same lesson, what's one thing you would try differently the next time?
So next time I think I would have them do it independently, and then have small groups come to me after and just tell them, okay, if you didn't understand a question, wait and we'll work on it in a small group, and then see which ones they did understand without me having to explain it to them, and then being able to explain it to them in a smaller group setting and go over those things. I think that's something I might would change.
Yeah. So I noticed, Princeton has moved to the CHAMPS model, and in the health, there's a section where you can turn to a partner, where you share with a partner. But I like to highlight with some teachers where there's a section that says ask 3 then meet.
Right.
So that may be a strategy that you can implement if you want to try that independent work.
Right.
Hey, maybe ask 3 of your partners or 3 of your peers, then come to me.
Right.
Or maybe implementing like a graphic organizer.
Yeah.
For maps, or helping them kind of see what a compass rose is. Create a graphic organizer,
Right.
For whatever a map legend may look like. Those sorts of things. So I think you had great success in the lesson. I really appreciate you for your time. Any questions for me in regards to the walkthrough?
I don't think so. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward. I think that for the most part, I think the lesson went really well.
Okay.
I do need to work on getting my objectives posted, but I think that I was able to make it relatable for the students. So I think that it went pretty well.
Yeah. One other suggestion I might make is necessarily having a call to attention when you're transitioning, because like those 2 students that were in the back that weren't necessarily paying attention at that moment. So, most elementary teachers, they will have something like, clap, 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 1, 2, 3, or like some lights off or something of that sort. when I was in the classroom, my call to attention was all eyes on me. You know, and that just kind of let my students know, hey, I need everybody's attention. I need everybody's eyes and ears. So I would suggest that as well, just to
Okay.
kind of as we're transitioning, and it's something that I need everybody's attention as I'm taking center stage in the classroom. That would definitely help them.
Okay.
Kind of get their attention. You know,
Okay.
we need to focus more. Ms. Meyer, thank you for your time. I really appreciate
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
participating with me. And I hope that this walkthrough has helped you become better and feel supported.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. I
Uh-huh.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.